Hey everybody, how's it going? I hope you guys are doing well. My name is Mack, Worley III, and this is On the Move, the show that attempts to inspire you to stand up for your rights. Today's December 14th, 2014, and I'm really excited about today's show. I really am. Today it's called the National Security episode, and we're going to focus a little deep dive here on all things national security. And I'm sure my opinion is probably going to differ from some of your own. I'm really looking forward to the conversation that is to be had here. Today's guest is Colin Farnsworth. He is the Oregon director of PANDA. Now, PANDA is an organization that is steadfastly against the National Defense Authorization Act. And for those of you who are unaware of what that is, we're going to deep dive on that specifically today as well. Anyway, we got a lot on the menu. I want to talk a little bit about initially some of the things that I've been up to this week. As you guys know, I like to take this time to really kind of talk about a lot of the things that I've been up to. So one of those things, we just had the I Will Not Comply rally in Olympia. Very excited about that situation. I participated in that event. It was really, really awesome to go to that. Meeting all those awesome people and spending time with patriots, like-minded people who are really responsible gun owners. Over 1,000 people. I don't know the exact head count, but there was at least 1,000 people there. Most of the people at this event were armed, and there were no incidents whatsoever. I was looking around. I was trying to see if anything was going on negative. Everything was positive. Everybody had a really good attitude. People were so nice. Gosh, the people were so nice. It was great to meet everybody. I actually met a couple of you out there. Some of you, my listeners, and other people in the community, the Patriot community. It was awesome to get out and meet you guys. That was so cool, and I really appreciate you guys coming up to me and talking to me on that. That was a lot of fun. Anyway, I want to get in a little bit more about that in a minute, and I'll play some clips from my experience there. And I want to move into the Weekly Defender in a moment here. But after that, around 5:15 p.m., we're going to be joined by the director of PANDA, the Oregon PANDA. Again, his name is Colin Farnsworth. And him and I, we're going to discuss the National Defense Authorization Act and, general national security. Also, I want to get his thoughts on this CIA torture report that just came out in the news. I'm really looking forward to that conversation. You guys don't want to miss this episode. It's going to be action-packed, full of information. So if you're interested in national security, you have some thoughts on it yourself, please feel free to give us a call. This is the most important part of the show, the interaction with you guys. So if you have some stuff on your mind, please let us know. The number to the show is 619-924-0986. Again, that's 619-924-0986. Or you can email the show at talk@onthemoveshow.com. If you have any other topics that you'd like to discuss, feel free to call in. No topics are off the table. So whatever you guys want to talk about, call us, light up the lines. Again, that number is 619-924-0986. And don't forget to check us out at blogtalkradio.com /OnTheMoveShow. That's where we broadcast every Sunday, 5 p.m. Pacific Standard Time. So you can subscribe to us or follow us here, and you can get all information about our new and upcoming shows. Also, you can go to our website, OnTheMoveShow.com. We got a lot of original content on there. Try to update it as often as possible. I have a blog on there where you can get my political commentary blogs and lots of videos from YouTube. I post them on the website as well, so you can access them from OnTheMoveShow.com. But you can also subscribe to us at YouTube.com /OnTheMoveShow for lots of our content, lots of original content. You can check us out on Facebook.com /OnTheMoveShow and follow us on Twitter.com /OnTheMoveShow. I know it's a lot of stuff, but we're out there doing a lot right now. We're trying to keep busy. Lots of stuff to do. It's really important that we stay active, we get out there, we get on the move. So I'm trying to do as much as I can with what we got here. So also, just to give you guys a heads up, if you didn't know, we got a lot of original content on the store, on our website, onthemoveshow.com. You can get there by clicking the shop link on the homepage. We got hundreds of products for sale on there. Check it out. I'm sure you'll find something you like. All designs are original, and anything you buy on there will help make our podcast bigger and better, and we really do appreciate your support, so thank you so much for that. Anyway, at this point, I want to quickly just play a review I did because I'm passionate about this book. Many of you may know I've been getting really into reading, and with that, I'm bringing back books from my childhood. You know, I'm reading books that I used to enjoy as a kid reading, or you know, when somebody would read it to me if I was really young. And you know, I don't know how you guys are as far as books you read as a child, you know, but for me, there were a lot of books that I read, and I must not have been old enough to really understand everything that was going on in the book. So revisiting it again as an adult, it adds a whole nother layer to it. You know, it's a lot more depth when you can understand it as an adult as opposed to being a child. So I really like that aspect of it. And one of these books, it's The Hatchet. I read it when I was in, I don't know, I had to be in middle school or something. And I'm not sure why I didn't pick up on all the details, but there's a lot of stuff that just blew past me, or maybe I forgot it somehow. I don't know. Regardless, what I do know is that now going back and reading it, you know, this is a book that I already loved, I already enjoyed. And anyway, here's the review. You guys can take a look for yourself.
Welcome to On the Move.
Hey everybody, it's Mack with On the Move. Thanks for tuning in today. We're doing another book review today, and this time we're doing a review on The Hatchet by Gary Paulson. I love this book. I love it. This is one of my favorite books from my childhood. I'm telling you, I can't get enough of this freaking book. I could read this over and over and over again, and let me tell you why. This book is about a young boy and his experience after his plane crashed down in the middle of a very, very dense bit of woods. So he's out in the middle of nowhere. He's by himself. The pilot that he was with is dead, and he is alone in the woods. Scary stuff. And this kid is basically out there with nothing but the clothes on his back and a hatchet that his mom gave him. And it is his story of survival. This kid does a whole bunch of different stuff. It's just a great book. Highly, highly recommend reading it. 5 stars. I wish I could give it 10 stars. I love this book. It's just amazing. And I mean, it's a middle grade book. So I mean, look at how big the letters are. I mean, it's easy to read. You know, it's not hard to read. It's real quick, and it's only a couple of pages here. Like, let's see here. It's 177 pages roughly, something like that. Anyway, it's not more than 200 pages. Great book. Highly recommend reading it. Anyway, here's the back of the book in case you're wanting to get this copy. Here's the front, and I love this book. I mean, I read this when I was a kid, and you know, it's even better now as an adult. I just really, really love this book. So if you guys are interested in getting your own copy, feel free to check the link in the description of this video, and don't forget to like this video, smash that like button, comment below. I'd like to hear what you guys have to say. If you read the book, I'd love to hear what you have to say about this book. Also, don't forget to subscribe to this. All right, so that's my review on The Hatchet. Really, really love that book. I actually just found out from a friend of mine that it's actually part of a sequel, and I'm really, really excited. Apparently, the guy, he's an adult now. He grows up, and apparently he's going back to where his plane wrecked, and a lot of stuff happens. I don't know everything. I just know briefly what I was told, but I'm really excited about that. I got to find out where that is. I'm going to be, as soon as I get off this show, I just found it out before the show. As soon as I get off the air, I'm actually going to be Googling Hatchet sequel and trying to figure out what it's called and what I can do to get it. So I'm really excited about this. Anyway, like I said, there's a lot of different things that I'm reading. I got, seriously, my pile of to-be-read books is probably, if I stacked it up, taller than me. I've got like 50 books in that pile, and I'm really racking it out. One review that you guys can expect, it will be in the very, very near future, is Prepper Recon, who's been a guest on our show several times. He's the author of the books. It's the Economic Collapse Chronicles. He has Part 1, Part 2, and Part 3. I just marathon read all of them. And, man, I love those books. I'm becoming such a book nerd. I can't even begin to tell you guys how much I'm into books now. It's crazy. Anyway, so enough about my fantasy book reading stuff here of trying to read 50 books in one day or whatever. But what we're going to go ahead and do right now. We're going to cut to a quick commercial break. When we get back, I see we got Colin on the line, and we're going to go ahead and move into the interview portion of the show here. So you guys don't want to miss this portion of the show. It's going to be really informative, and I'm very excited to have Colin on the show. I haven't spoken with him before, and I'm really honored to get the opportunity. So we'll be right back, everybody. Don't go anywhere.
I do solemnly swear that I will support and defend the Constitution of the United States of America against all enemies, foreign and domestic, and that I will bear true faith and allegiance to the same, and that I take this obligation freely without any mental reservation or purpose of evasion, pledging my life, my fortune, and my sacred honor. So help me God. Join us at oathkeepers.org.
Support On The Move. Help us make this podcast bigger and better. You can do this by going to our store and purchasing one of our hundreds of products. All designs are original and made for patriots like you. Just go to cafepress.com/onthemoveshow. We appreciate your support. Hi, I'm Latasha Worley, and I work with candidates to creatively and effectively communicate their message to voters. I offer professional graphic design services, from yard signs to flyers, from logos to vehicle magnets. Email me today at latashaworley@gmail.com. That's LATOSHA Worley@gmail.com for a quote on items for your campaign.
Broadcasting from deep within occupied territory on the far left coast. You're listening to On the Move with Mack Worley III. Stand up, speak out, and get on the move. And now your host, Mack Worley III.
All right, we're back. I appreciate you guys sticking with us. So we have Colin Farnsworth from the Oregon Panda. I'm going to bring him on the line. I want to talk a little bit about, first and foremost, for those who are not aware, Colin, what is Panda?
Yeah, PANDA stands for the People Against the National Defense Authorization Act. And these aren't people, normally the NDAA or the National Defense Authorization Act is usually a budgetary bill that's passed every year to fund the military. A lot of people are usually confused that our group maybe is against military or against funding veterans, and that's absolutely not the case. What we're against is specifically against the 2012 National Defense Authorization Act, which has a very small provision in it in over the 600 different pages that basically allows the indefinite detention of American citizens. And so the PANDA group is against this single section of this particular NDAA that pretty much, destroys the Constitution and pretty much denies Americans of their right to due process.
So let me play devil's advocate here because, first of all, anybody who knows me will know that I'm 100% in support of what you guys are doing right now. But let me play devil's advocate first and foremost.
Sure.
Your opponents, people who are for the NDAA, they say, well, what are we going to do? We have a war on terror that we're fighting. We got a lot of threats. We have to be able to give the government as much power as they need in order to eliminate all threats. So what do you say to that?
Well, our framers, I'm sure you've quoted them before, but who have said that we don't give up our security for safety, otherwise we end up with neither, right? Or we don't give up liberty for security, as we end up with neither. And there's plenty of different things that we have in our justice system that allow federal authorities as well as local authorities to engage terrorists or potential terrorists to prevent crimes. And these things don't need us to get rid of our constitutional rights and our constitutional guaranteed provisions to do that. So basically, there's plenty of different availability options for federal officials to get terrorists, and getting rid of our constitutional rights is unnecessary. So, that's really what our motto, about that. So.
Yes, sir. No, I completely agree. And the quote you're using is Benjamin Franklin: "Those who would sacrifice a little liberty to gain a little security deserve neither and will lose both." That's actually my favorite quote in history. I live by that. Honestly, it's absolutely true. Right now, what we are seeing is an expansion of federal power. And this is a conversation that was had at the founding of our country. They were so concerned about a centralized federal Leviathan being able to have so much power to be able to basically usurp whatever power that they want. And that's what we're seeing right now. And I have to say, first and foremost, thank you guys for what you guys are doing right now, fighting the National Defense Authorization Act. I know that most people don't even know about this thing. Everybody I've ever spoken to that's not really into politics, they have no idea what this thing is. So can you talk about what this provision actually specifically says? Do you happen to have any information on what it says in terms of being able to arrest or detain people for an indefinite amount of time? And doesn't it also give permission to assassinate American citizens as well?
Yeah, so, if you were given a situation where the federal government was pretty much just completely getting rid of the Constitution and the rights of the people, they wouldn't do it cut and dry. They would stuff it into a bill that is over 600 pages long, and they do it with some very legal language that allows their secret courts and their attorneys to, misinterpret what its original intent was meant to do, right? So what this section does is basically it allows the federal executive branch, so basically the presidents and generals in the Army, to declare anywhere in the United States the potential battlefield on the war on terror. And by identifying anywhere a battlefield on the war on terror, it then replaces constitutional law with a law of war. Now, the law of war under Section 1021 authorizes the indefinite detention, rendition. So the rendition means that you're detained and you can be sent to any of these black sites where we're now hearing about the illegal torturing that was occurring. And although torture is not allowed on American soil, well, you send them off to these black sites that no one knows, and then you can start doing these torture. So on these black sites, you then are allowed to potentially torture or then execute these suspected people without any trial, without any judicial review. This is simply under the authority of the executive branch. And clearly in our due process system, we don't allow one branch of the government to declare unilaterally decisions like that. You must have at least a warrant. You must have some type of judicial review. And under the NDA, it's pretty much it usurps the judicial branch altogether, and it gives the president and the executive branch complete authority. So it doesn't necessarily say that you have a right to do targeted killing or assassinations, but because of this rendition clause, it does allow you to be sent to foreign jurisdictions or black sites, and pretty much you're pretty much disappeared. Your family doesn't know where you are. No one knows where you are. You don't have a right to an attorney, and at that point, all your constitutional rights have then disappeared.
You about the Constitution in particular here, because one thing that I've had several conversations with some of my friends. A lot of them are kind of like the hawk variety, where they believe in absolute total war, and they don't feel sorry for your enemy whatsoever. Okay, so on this whole war terrorism thing, this kind of situation is very difficult because you can't just total war terrorism, because it's not a place, it's not a country. It's very difficult to wage war on an idea. So, in terms of constitutional rights, and the reason why I bring this up, and I'll relate it to this in a second here, when when I talk about constitutional rights, I talk about them in terms of being a natural human right, or some people may refer to them as a God-given right. And by that regard, if it is natural, if all humans possess those rights, and that would mean that it's not just an American right. It's not just my and your rights because we're American citizens. It's everybody in the world's rights. So when we start allowing our government to disrespect these natural human rights, these rights that exist and were never given to just Americans, they just exist naturally. When we start allowing our government to violate these human rights on other people who are not American citizens and disrespect those rights, it's no real surprise that they're going to have start to actually get a disrespect for the rights in general and use whatever means they can to take them away from us. Would you agree with that? Do you think that all humans have these rights, or is this just an American thing?
Yeah, I would say that if we want to be on the right side of history, I would think that all humans deserve the similar rights that we've enshrined ourselves in Americans with under the Constitution. But what is a real wake-up call from the NDAA, and a lot of people, they're a little bit more hesitant to give people in Yemen and Somalia and terrorists in Afghanistan and Syria the same rights and protections under the Constitution. And despite that debate if they should be protected by the Constitution or not, the fact is that Americans under the NDAA can be treated like anyone else in the world. And just to go further, what the NDAA specifically says, and I'll quote from the actual bill itself, or actually, the bill. It's no longer a bill; it's a law. And there's two provisions that are very vague that allow pretty much anyone to be included, including your mother, your daughter, your son, your father. There's two provisions. One of them, these are the people who could be labeled covered persons under the NDAA. The first person is, and I quote, substantially supported Al-Qaeda, the Taliban, or associated forces. So right there, substantially supported, that terminology is very vague. We don't know what is substantially supported. Is that a tweet? Is that a blog? Is that a liking on Facebook? We don't know. Mm-hmm. And associated forces is also another vague term. We don't know who else is associated. Who is an associated forces? So a lot of journalists are coming out who have spent a lot of time in the Middle East and have been reporting, doing investigative reporting of those in the Middle East. And they don't know if they're reporting on the Middle East and why these people are so angry at us or why they're doing these terrorist actions, which I think is important to know. They could actually be considered as substantially supporting. The other provision, and I'll quote again from the actual law itself that really incorporates everyone and is the most vaguely written of all of them, says covered persons that could be included under the NDA include any person who has committed a belligerent act. Now, belligerent act is nowhere defined in this bill, in this law at all. And so, belligerent act, is that Tea Party groups, or is that Occupy groups, or is that someone tweeting on Facebook or on Twitter, or is that someone holding a banner over an overpass? So
that could be anything. I mean, that could even be drunk and disorderly, a belligerent act. Exactly. And so it's these vague terms that, as we've seen, these vague terms in the Patriot Act that has led now to the warrantless wiretapping of almost all Americans under with the National Security Agency. We're seeing this right now, and this is kind of opening the door. Maybe Obama administration won't enact this to detain Americans, but we don't know if future administrations will do this. And it's pretty much opened the door to pretty much lawlessness under the executive branch, giving them dictatorial power to detain anyone that pretty much dissents against the federal government. Absolutely. And for me, it's scary because why would you create a police state? If you don't plan on using it, why does the government continue to amass all these different regulatory powers, all these different national security powers, and they create secret courts with secret laws and secret interpretations of the laws that we're not even allowed to know? And the whole point of popular sovereignty, which is basically what our country was developed on. It's the concept of leaders are put into power based on popular vote, democracy, and or Republican values of an actual republic. But it's very concerning when we have a government that's supposed to be representing us, but we don't even know what they're doing, and we're not allowed to know. How can we consent to that?
Right. Exactly. It is frustrating. It is frustrating to see them do that. And like I mentioned earlier, there are plenty of legal options for the federal government and local police departments to use. They can do wiretapping. It just has to have a judicial warrant where the judicial branch, the lawyers and judges have been involved and can say that this is a threat. The other thing that makes the NDA even more scary is that these people who are maybe substantially supporting Al-Qaeda or have caused a belligerent act, these are only suspected individuals. These aren't convicted individuals. And so this is anyone that has been suspected. And so there again, you can have someone that, and here again we're bringing it back to the torture cases that are now being, brought up with the CIA investigation. A lot of these people it was a problem of a misidentity. These people were actually the wrong people they were looking for. So we're opening up the door for American citizens or anyone who maybe has been misidentified to just be disappeared. And so here again, it is horrible. These interpretations that are done in secret is not what our founding fathers wanted, is not what the Constitution allows, and is completely illegal.
Absolutely. So what is your thoughts about applying two different standards? Because when we're dealing with terrorists, we have the rules of war that we deal with them in that regard. And when we're dealing with American citizens, we're supposed to be using the Constitution and the rule of law underneath our current justice system. What are your thoughts about having two different situations, two different ways to deal with somebody who supposedly broke a law or is suspected of some kind of crime?
That's a great question, and I don't know the answer. I do know that Americans are anyone in the United States is guaranteed the constitutional rights outlined by the Constitution. In terms of warfare worldwide and through international law, there are international laws, and as we've seen the U.S. military under these new torture provisions or these new torture memos that have come out, we're breaking international law. We're breaking international treaties. So these things probably should be prosecuted in international courts, similarly to those who've been tried, during World War II. I don't know how constitutional law would apply internationally. I do know it's probably. There were a couple of Americans who were killed by drone strikes in, I believe, Yemen. Anwar al-Awlaki was the first American to be killed by drone strike without any judicial review. He was kind of like a shock jock propagandist for the Muslim extremists. And he didn't actually cause violence necessarily, but he might have promoted it through his words. And then, unfortunately, his son, several months later, who was only 15 years old, born in Colorado, was also killed by a drone strike later. So this actually does open up the door for that discussion. Can Americans abroad be struck down by drone strikes without any judicial review, without any, consideration to the Constitution? So it is a great question. I don't know that answer, but it would be something that maybe should be into the public debate.
Absolutely, and this is why I asked the question about applying the constitutional rights to everyone, because it's very concerning to me that we are allowing our government to violate the rights that we hold sacred. These are sacred to us, and for some reason we're okay with them violating other people's rights. These sacred rights that we believe that it would be abhorrent for them to do the same thing to us, and it may be because we're thinking, oh well, that's our enemy. Let's be callous against these people and let's give them a different set of rules. I don't know. I personally, I completely disagree with it. I think that there is so many ways that we could handle this, and the basic concept. Because, and first of all, before I get into that, what do you think that the Constitution is? Why do we have a Constitution? I think we had some genius people, our founding fathers, come up with
who were historians and looked at the past historical events and realized that this was a framework to create a free society. That these were the linchpins to detract tyranny and to detract people from being oppressed. And so I really do think that the Constitution, as sorry, I'm getting.
What was that? You still there? Oh, looks like we lost him. Hey, if you're out there, Colin, please feel free to give us a call back. This is as good a time as any for us to go ahead and take a quick commercial break, guys. I do appreciate you all sticking with us. If you have anything at all that you would like to talk about, you got a question for myself or you got a question for our guest today, Colin Farnsworth, please feel free to give us a call. Number to the show is 619-924-0986. Again, that is 619-924-0986. And we will be right back after these messages. Don't go anywhere.
Oath Keepers is a nonpartisan association of current active duty military, reserve, guard, veteran, and firefighters who will fulfill the oath we swore, with the support of like-minded citizens who take an oath to stand with us, to support and defend the Constitution against all enemies, foreign and domestic. So help us God. Join us at oathkeepers.org.
Support On The Move. Help us make this podcast bigger and better. You can do this by going to our store and purchasing one of our hundreds of products. All designs are original and made for patriots like you. Just go to cafepress.com/onthemoveshow. We appreciate your support. Hi, I'm Latasha Worley, and I work with candidates to creatively and effectively communicate their message to voters. I offer professional graphic design services from yard signs to flyers, from logos to vehicle magnets. Email me today at latashaworley@gmail.com. That's LATOSHA Worley@gmail.com for a quote on items for your campaign.
Broadcasting from deep within occupied territory on the far left coast. You're listening to On the Move with Mack Worley III. Stand up, speak out, and get on the move. And now your host, Mack Worley III.
Hey, MacPack, we are back, and we've got Colin back on the line. I want to see if this is him. Hey, Colin, you there?
Yeah, I'm here.
All right, perfect. So, we just cut to a quick commercial break after you dropped off the line. So,
sorry about that.
No worries. I understand. Stuff happens. It's live radio. Anything can happen. So, anyway, as far as why I was asking about, what the Constitution was, I heard a really amazing explanation from it. It was, I believe his name is Walter Williams. He has a YouTube video. I believe it's Walter Williams Suffers No Fools. It's a conference he had. And somebody asked him what the Constitution was. And his explanation was, I think it was by far one of the best explanations I've ever heard in terms of why we even have a Constitution. And he's an economist, so he has a different perspective than people who may just be in talk radio like myself. He brings an economic side to it. And from what he said, his description was it's basically rules of a game. He gave the example of how would you like to come over to my house and play some poker with me, and the rules of the game are going to be living. Like people say the Constitution is a living document, So the rules are going to be a living set of rules. They can evolve and change as I need them to. And, in some cases my two pair may be beat your three of a kind. And that is essentially what saying that our Constitution is a living, breathing document is saying, that the rules of the game can change at any given point at the time. So that's why it's not a living, breathing document, and especially in terms of our Bill of Rights. Those are enumerated in the Constitution and very, very important, but they can't be changed because those rules, those rights, those freedoms, liberties, however you want to describe it, they were not given by the government, so the government can't take them away. They were endowed by our Creator, or their natural human rights, however you want to look at them. So these rules are constant. The only thing that you can change really is the powers enumerated in the rest of the Constitution, and delegate it around and move it as you want to reorganize, structural power and things like that. But we also have to keep in mind the rules of the game have to stay the same, and the separation of power has to stay there, because that's the rule of the game. If we change it halfway through the game, we've just changed the rules. It's not fair for people, and that's essentially why we have a Constitution. So, would you agree with that?
Yeah, I think that's a good point. I also think, and I forget who said this quote, that I'm roughly paraphrasing that. Government is like fire, that it can be a useful servant but a dangerous master. And it's interesting that you brought in an economic stance to the Constitution, because now we have seen kind of corporations kind of utilizing the Constitution how they want, and we've seen lobbying and special interests becoming a much more, having a larger voice than the actual people themselves. And so in terms of economics, I think it is kind of playing by the same rules. But also what I was trying to mention earlier, by looking at history and seeing what was happening, is that as a history teacher myself, I always tell the students that, the one thing that we learn from history is we don't learn from history. And I think that our founding fathers were trying to have us all learn from history and not repeat the same mistakes that this government, through one means or another, either economic or any other, eventually can turn on the people and oppress the people. And by following these guides, these rule books that you were stating, it does make a fair playing field for everybody. From whatever stance you're playing from the civil rights standpoint to a capitalistic standpoint, it really does embody the free market system if played by the same rules and not this ever misinterpreted by the Supreme Court.
Mm-hmm.
So
yeah, and don't even get me started on the Supreme Court. I completely disagree with 9 activist judges being able to decide what is constitutional and what is not. That's never the way our founders intended it. It was never written into the Constitution. But I digress. I'm not even going to get into that, because that's like a 25-minute rabbit hole that I'll go down. To bring us maybe somewhat down that rabbit hole is why this NDAA is so important, I think. Because I think a lot of us believe that how can 9 people interpret the entire power structure of the Constitution? And what this 2012 NDA really does open the door, because what the NDA does, the 2012 NDA, especially the section I'm talking about, Section 1021, is that it's one of the clearest examples of the failure of our federal system of checks and balances. We saw Absolutely.
that 2012 NDA was passed overwhelmingly, 75% or more in our House of Representatives, 93% or more in the Senate, even with these extremely vague and unconstitutional provisions. Then the president, who promised that he wasn't going to sign this bill because of the unconstitutional provisions of the Section 1021, he then signs it anyway. Then a few journalists sued the Obama administration and leading people from the Congress, saying that how can you pass this? It went to court. The first federal judge ruled it unconstitutional against the First and Fifth Amendments of the Constitution. Then it went to the Circuit Court of Appeals. The Circuit Court of Appeals judge overruled her decision, not ruling on the actual constitutionality of the Section 1021, but said that these plaintiffs couldn't prove that they had been specifically targeted. So then those plaintiffs then appealed the Circuit Court of Appeals decision. It went to the Supreme Court, and the Supreme Court then decided not even to take this decision, not to rule on it at all either. They completely avoided the whole issue. So we just saw, we're right here in the last 3 years, we've seen a complete failure of the federal checks and balances, and now we have an unconstitutional law still in the book. So clearly it doesn't work. And I know that you had, you've had Sheriff Richard Mack on before, And this is where it's really bringing it back and bringing back state sovereignty and local rights under the county sheriff and county jurisdiction. Because if all three branches of the federal government have allowed this unconstitutional law to exist, it's now up for the backup system of checks and balances to start getting enacted. And that's basically the states and local governments to start protecting the people's rights under their oaths of office. And I'll quote here, because I'm the Oregon state rep, I work a lot with the Oregon representatives, and under our Article 15, Section 3 of Oregon State's Constitution, it says, and I quote, to support the Constitution, every single person is supposed to, and I quote, support the Constitution of the United States and of the state. And so it is an obligation of the county sheriff and every appointed and elected official throughout the state to enforce the Constitution. And so they are by law obligated to, when the federal government makes a clear mistake, such as this case in 2012 NDA, they need to enforce the Constitution. And so what I'm doing right now in Oregon is we're actually enacting county ordinances to, basically say that this law, if it's interpreted incorrectly and enforced incorrectly in Lane County, those people will be criminally liable for breaking the Constitution, and they could potentially have felony charges, and that would include even federal agents. And so it is kind of a case, one of a kind, but because of the complete destruction of our checks and balances at the federal level, it is opening the door for us to reclaim our local sovereignty and reclaim our 10th Amendment rights under the Constitution.
Yes, sir. Yeah, and I completely agree with that. I want to touch on checks and balances in a minute, but we have a caller. His name is Steve. He had a question for you. He wanted to talk with you real quick. Hey, Steve, are you there?
Yes. Yep.
You're on the line with Colin. Go ahead.
All right. Thank you, Colin, for what you're doing there. You've been talking about the NDAA Act, and also we've got a Patriot Act that impedes our constitutional rights. And then here just a couple of years ago, we had the House Resolution 347, which is basically an anti-protest. What it basically says is anytime the Secret Service is around and it's posted or designated, they have a right to restrict people's, even to the point of where they can be incarcerated for protesting. Our forefathers did, when they created the Bill of Rights, the Declaration, and our Constitution, had it very strongly in their mind that they wanted to make serious business out of this. And anytime one of our representatives or elected officials violated their oath, they were even threatened with being hung in public. Now, it seems that our government's putting more and more acts, Patriot Act, NDAA, anti-protest, they're all acts against the people of the country, in this country. But yet they fail to enforce, to keep us safe, they fail to enforce current laws, which in the president's position, he is, in his oath, his job, he is supposed to faithfully execute all the laws. Now, our politicians, was called the acts of nobility. There was an honor system. They had to keep to their oath and do their job, or they would be severe repercussions out of that. Being that you're fighting the NDAA right now, and a lot of people appreciate that because they understand it. Is there any methods that or remedies that you know of to go after these politicians who are knowingly passing bills, as you said, piece by piece, to erode our rights away? Is there anything that you have come up in your studies as a remedy to go after and hold these politicians accountable, and in that manner, down the road in the future, that their future politicians will start understanding that when they violate their oath and our rights, there is repercussions? Sorry for being long-winded on it, but
no, that's a great question, and I don't know we need prosecution. I don't. I don't know about the hanging of actual politicians. I don't totally trust the federal government to make decisions within the death penalty about who should be hung and who's breaking the Constitution or not because of their long history of misinterpretations of the Constitution. But I definitely agree that, if we want to stop these crimes and these breaking the Constitution, we need prosecution. And I don't know where these civil rights lawyers are who can prosecute these people, but that's absolutely what we need. But unfortunately, before we have these prosecutions, we need the public will to do so. And I see a complete breakdown in the level of education of Americans, because we see John McCain down in Arizona, who had he supported the NDAA on the Senate floor, and here he is getting reelected again, and he's about to be the leader of the House of the House Armed Committee, the Armed Services Committee, and he's going to be making decisions for future engagements of war. We also see Lindsey Graham from South Carolina, who gets reelected again. So, it's really up to the people of that state to get these people out. The whole point of having short-term limits in the House of Representatives, who are supposed to be making declarations of war, is that these people are very accountable to the people itself, and I don't see these people of these states holding them accountable. So, it really does come down to these radio shows like this and other ways of educating the people to realize that, we do need to create an uproar of we demanding prosecution. That's what we do. I don't know how to do that, but we need to educate the people so they can hold their people accountable.
Absolutely. And first of all, Steve, thanks for calling in. On that note, though, in terms of what we can do, I've often sat here and thought about, is it just the representatives? Are we just electing bad representatives? And for me, I think I don't even know if getting the right man or woman in the position is even the answer to the problem anymore, because I don't think that anybody who goes into Washington, first and foremost, comes out a good person. I think that you send in a good person, which is doubtful, first of all, because I think anybody who wants a position of power probably shouldn't be allowed to have it, first and foremost. But you get these already pretty corruptible people that are going into these high offices, and then they come out even more corrupt than they were before. So, and it's a lot of politics as far as trying to please your party and doing backdoor deals, and some of this stuff is just standard business. Even when you start looking at the actual leadership, you got the Senate Majority Leader, Senate Minority, Senate Whips. These kind of things. It's all the whips are trying to whip the other people into the same position as the party line. Essentially, that's their job. So it's really kind of disturbing if you see somebody who's in Congress and they're going against the grain of what their party wants them to do. Then they're not going to get on any committees, which is essentially where people do all the work in Congress. Is these subcommittees, these committees that are standing committees, things like that. They're highly coveted. A lot of people really want these positions. So if you go against the grain, you're not going to get put on the committee, and then at that point you're not going to be effective, and you may do nothing and get voted out next year, and you definitely won't get any money for your reelection fund. This is the problem. It's the establishment between these two parties. And honestly, I think a third party it's high time we insert a third party in there, make it fair, give everybody equal representation as far as if they're going to have debates, let them all debate. Because right now you have to have a ridiculous amount of people to even support your candidate to get a third party on the stage. And that makes a big difference, having that voice on the stage. That I don't know the answer, but I'm starting to think that just electing the right guy is not going to be the answer anymore. What do you think?
Yeah, I think you're right. I do have mixed feelings about adding another party. I think in terms of political debates or national political debates, if you had that third party, they could introduce ideas that would completely stump the Democrats and Republicans who are much more similar in a lot of ways than they are different. That would really kind of rile up and make these debates much more interesting. And so I do agree with that. But I also think that it kind of adds another head to the rock hydra. We already have we already have these two kind of, these behemoths of parties. And to add one more, I think you could be just adding another head to this monster, in which they could play each other off, or add four parties. What would that do? And it would kind of divide the country even more. So, I kind of see ways against that. But, I also think the infiltration of the Democrats, and I mean, we can get people involved. I mean, I think we have Congress at the lowest approval rating in history. And so where are these people who are disapproving of them? Why don't they get involved in their local Democratic Party, or why don't they get involved in their local Republican Party and change the platform, right? These parties are promoted by the base, right? So, let's change the platform at the base. So I think you're right that it would be very challenging. It is challenging for newcomers. But you look at, Rand Paul and some of these newcomers coming into Congress, and they're creating shockwaves that haven't been seen before. So I don't think it is impossible for people to make a difference. And people that are now supporting liberty and supporting the Constitution, they are getting voted back again and again. So I don't have complete loss hope, but also what I mentioned before is bringing it back to the county level, bringing it back to the state levels. Let's let Washington do what Washington does and just corrupt and do whatever. But if we have state sovereignty, if we have support for the Constitution and the support for the law of the land here in our states, and we are strictly enforcing the Constitution in our states, the federal government can't do much, especially if these states come together and saying, you know what, you can pass your laws, but if they're unconstitutional, you're not going to enforce them, and it'll be illegal to enforce them locally. And I think that the NDA is very special in that regard because we're getting support. We have in Lane County, where I live and I work most heartily on this issue. We have the Democratic Party of Lane County who has signed a resolution against the NDA. We've also had the Republican Party of Lane County sign a resolution. So this bipartisan support coming together, supporting the constitutional local rights, I think is the linchpin to bringing back what we all want for this country, and that is the constitutional law as it was originally intended by our founding fathers.
Absolutely, and I definitely agree with that. In terms of adding another head to the Hydra, so to speak. I was reading some articles in the Federalist Papers. I think it was Federalist number 10 by James Madison, and he was talking about how he essentially wanted to have a lot of different parties. The more parties, the better, as far as he was concerned, because the political power, it stays the same. I mean, there's going to be an overall amount of power, all right? And right now that power is divided 50-50 among these two conglomerate parties. But the more parties you get, the more that power is divided. The more voices are out there, the more parties that have voice and start to actually control some power, the more that power is divided, and it becomes essentially a check and balance in and of itself. But in terms of these check and balances, I honestly believe that that the National Defense Authorization Act is an act against checks and balances because, for one, and I talk about this all the time, I'm sure you probably have some information about it, but jury nullification, okay? So that was one part of the establishment of this country that was put there to actually be a check and a balance. The people can vote to find somebody not guilty. So even if they're clearly in violation of the law, the law itself is on trial, and they can say, no, not guilty. We don't care if he violated the law. He's not guilty. We disagree with that. So the law itself is on trial.
Yeah, I kind of lost you there. I can't hear you. If you can hear me, something cut out.
Support On The Move. Help us make this podcast bigger and better. You can do this by going to our store and purchasing one of our hundreds of products. All designs are original and made for patriots like you. Just go to cafepress.com/onthemoveshow. We appreciate your support. Hi, I'm Latasha Worley, and I work with candidates to creatively and effectively communicate their message to voters. I offer professional graphic design services from yard signs to flyers, from logos to vehicle magnets. Email me today at latashaworley@gmail.com. That's LATOSHA Worley@gmail.com for a quote on items for your campaign.
Broadcasting from deep within occupied territory on the far left coast. You're listening to On the Move with Mack Worley III. Stand up, speak out, and get on the move. And now your host, Mack Worley III.
Hey everybody, we're back. I'm sorry about the problems here. We're back. I got lost on my internet connection here for some reason. I don't know what happened, but now we're back. I got Colin on the line. Hey, Colin, are you there?
I am here.
All right. Sorry about that. My internet connection dropped, and now I'm calling you on my cell phone here. So it's live radio again. Anything can happen. So anyway, in terms of this jury nullification that I was talking about, the National Defense Authorization Act, it is actually a usurp on the check and balance, because now somebody was just merely suspected of a crime. Okay, so in this case where somebody's indefinitely detained for the mere suspicion of being a terrorist, now they've completely removed the check and the balance of the jury nullification. Now we don't even get to determine if by the citizens the law itself is justifiable. What do you think about that?
Yeah, I mean, it is, like I said before, it is one of the clearest signs of our failure of checks and balances. And you would think the Supreme Court, who have a lot of legalese and understand the language of law, would take this opportunity to judge on the 2012 NDA, and yet they gave it up. They pretty much gave this power to the federal executive branch. So right there, you see the collusion and failure of our federal branches. I think jury nullification. You ask 10 people about jury nullification, and maybe one of them knows about it. It is a great protection that our founding fathers have allowed. Unfortunately, as a lawyer, you can't even inform the jury that they have the right to actually judge the law itself in its constitutionality. Otherwise, the crime will be thrown out. And for those who are uninterested in being part of, when you get selected for jury selection, if you tell the lawyers who are selecting you for jury selection, and you tell them that I'm a big believer in jury nullification, you can guarantee that you will not be selected for your jury. I don't recommend that. I think you should be honoring your civic obligation to do the jury service, and I think it would be kind of fun. But they definitely don't want anyone to know about that, and that's very true. And actually, during the Prohibition era, when alcohol was illegal, jury nullification was used all the time for these people who had evidence against them stacked to the ceiling. And then the jury would say not guilty despite all the evidence against the accused, simply because they didn't believe that the law, should exist altogether. Although, it was constitutional because of, the constitutional amendment, unlike the prohibition on drugs these days, which, there is the same prohibition without any amendment. And yet you do actually see in Northern California, where there's a big populace in favor of decriminalization of marijuana, you do see modern cases of jury nullification up there against those who are accused for either growing or manufacturing marijuana products. So it is a great choice. Another, going back to nullification, the broader nullification is that we do have powers under our county sheriff in our state to nullify these laws. And then if the law is clearly unconstitutional, and you do have support of the most of your citizens, it is the obligation of your elected and appointed officials to enforce the law. So, it is very frustrating. It is very frustrating to see that all three branches have pretty much all decided to give this overreaching power to the executive branch, which originally our founding fathers wanted the executive branch to have the least amount of power of all the branches. And here it is now becoming a very dictatorial branch altogether.
Yeah, and it really upsets me because with the NDAA, we have actually lost the ability to do anything as a people. So with the runaway government, that was the whole point of jury nullification, was the government runs away, your representatives aren't representing you in Congress, they're making illegal, unconstitutional laws, the president is with them in cahoots, and he doesn't veto it, and then the Supreme Court or the judicial system, they actually uphold those unconstitutional laws. And then as a last check and a balance, the jury nullification was put there so that we could answer to an out-of-control government. What they've done is they've rigged the system now. They can disappear people. Anybody that's dissenting, oh, you know what? You're gone, indefinitely detained. And you'll never see a trial. You don't have it doesn't matter. We don't have to convict you to torture you. We can torture a confession out of you if we want, because you're a suspected terrorist. And you don't have any more constitutional rights now because it doesn't apply to you anymore. You are now underneath the rules of war. All of this stuff, it seems like the system keeps getting more and more rigged, and it's really upsetting. I love the fact that there are people like you guys out there doing something, trying to stand up and fight for our rights. So let me ask you, as far as Panda, do you guys have a website? Where can people go to get information about you, support you guys, all that good stuff?
Yeah, we have the national website, Panda, is pandaunite.org, and that, I believe, is run out of Ohio. And we are affiliated here. We're Panda Oregon, and we're on Facebook. You type in Panda Oregon into Facebook, you'll find us. We're also, if you type in Panda Oregon on YouTube, you can find us. We don't actually have a website. And in our approach at Oregon's chapter of Panda is a little different. We are really trying to strike up the local power of the counties. And Oregon is a little different in terms of our state law. We have something called county home rule, which allows counties actually, and I'll quote from our Association of Oregon Counties. Let's see if I can find it here. That says that we basically have the most. I can't find the actual quote. But we have the most discretionary authority than any other county in any other state in the country. And so this is why here in Oregon we have chosen to do through county ordinances to really harness the very local sovereignty of our local officials. But you can find out a whole thing about us at Panda Oregon on YouTube and Facebook if you search the terms. Otherwise, it's pandaunite.org, and there's chapters all across the United States, and you can get involved with theirs as well. And so it's very, it's very autonomous. Each chapter can tackle the problem as they please, although there is a framework on, how they suggest to do so. But it is a great cause, and like I say, the power to the 2012 NDA is the bipartisanship that is passing it, is that we have support from both the Democrats and Republicans, and with that support, you can get your local officials to do whatever you want, because it is such a divisive political environment we're living in that if you can get both sides to agree on something like this, you can take it far. And so it is a tricky issue to get across to people, but once they understand, it does have some power behind it of the utter failure of our federal checks and balances.
Yes, sir. Absolutely. So as far as other than the National Defense Authorization Act, do you guys have a position on the Patriot Act and any other legislation that you may be against?
Oh, man, see, and this is the thing, is that you talk to community groups and political activists, and there are countless issues that you can get involved in, and you can promote your stance on one way or the other. And I think the success of PANDA, the People Against the National Defense Authorization Act, is that we are laser dot on one issue that is so unconstitutional. We don't like to expand upon anything else other than that. I could tell you all my views on other things, but I think it detracts from the single issue that could really support the local sovereignty and really expose the fraud that is going on at the federal level. And so that is what's beautiful about this organization. It is laser centered on one issue, and we don't want to tie anything else to it. We don't want to be partisan in any other debate. We're not going to get into gun rights. We're not going to get into anything, despite how we may feel one way or another. We want to be laser tight on our stance, and that is the clear unconstitutionality of Section 1021 of the 2012 NDAA.
So let me ask you then, Colin, if you guys are successful, if at the end of this journey that you guys are on, you end up repealing the NDA, what do you guys do? You pack up and go home, or what's going on? No, I'm very, I've had my heart set on implementing county ordinances using Oregon County Home Rule Authority, because I really think it does open the door to promote local sovereignty here in Oregon. I don't know what other states have. I know there's probably some other county home rule states, but really, my goal is to bring back if we are successful here in the NDA, I will go to the next cause that promotes basically the Constitution as it was originally intended. Like I say, I'm a school teacher normally, and I am just going to continue to look at the facts of history and look at the ratifying conventions as this contract was signed, our Constitution was signed as by our states, and hopefully overturn these 200 years of misinterpretations of our Constitution. Right now, I believe that the 2012 NDA is one of the best examples of doing so, because we are reestablishing local sovereignty, reestablishing states' rights in an appropriate setting. And I'll go to, there's like you said, you can bring up the Patriot Act or any of these other issues. There are plenty of issues to choose from. Right now, my issue is the 2012 NDA, but it will continue no matter what the cause is. I'll be there, front line. Making the truth known about the Constitution, its original intent, and how we can defend our liberties at a local level. Yes, sir. So I was wondering, do you have time for one more caller? We have Christopher on the line. I believe he wants to speak with you.
Yeah, absolutely, man. Bring on the callers. It's great.
Okay, all right. Hey, Christopher, you're on with Colin. What's on your mind?
Well, it's all kind of new to me. Politics is kind of new to me. I was kind of swept up by Roger, the senator that's running for presidential candidate for 2016, and we all want to do the right thing, basically, for the country. I know I'm a big veteran advocate. Try to get homeless vets established and going, and it sounds crazy, but we're going to try to go for the independent party for the White House, and we think it's not about Republicans and Democrats, but it's about Americans coming together as one.
Mm-hmm. Did you have a question for Colin?
I don't understand too much what this act is, but it sounds like the way he's describing it, it's for the better what he's trying to do with it. I just came in the show a little bit late, so.
Okay. Well, for those of you who just tuned in, PANDA is against the National Defense Authorization Act, and that act has a provision in there that allows the indefinite detention of Americans or anyone who's suspected of terrorism. In this case, they can basically just disappear you, put you away, no trial, no jury, no judge, nothing along those lines. So no constitutional rights, essentially. In terms of that is what this group PANDA is about.
Hey, and if I could interject, I do. What's also unique about this issue, and I totally agree with the caller that really the key here is bringing these two parties together that are so divisive, and this is classic divide and conquer, right? Everyone can see this. I'm sure you've heard it before. It shouldn't be redundant because that is truly what's happening. But the 2012 NDA was ruled unconstitutional by a federal judge of New York, and they ruled it unconstitutional under the First and Fifth Amendment. Then the president, the Obama administration, appealed that decision, sent it to the Circuit Court of Appeals, and then that decision was overruled. So right there, we're seeing a collapse in our own judicial system. And so, if I may, I'm going to read you the actual quote from the Catherine Forrest, who is the federal judge of New York, who ruled it unconstitutional. And I quote, "Plaintiffs are a group of writers, journalists, activists whose work regularly requires them to engage in writing, speech, and associational activities protected by the First Amendment. They have testified credibly to having an actual and reasonable fear that their activities will subject them to indefinite military detention pursuant of Section 1021. At the March hearing, the government was unable to provide the court with any assurance that the plaintiff's activities would not, in fact, subject the plaintiff to military detention pursuant of 1021. The due process rights guaranteed by the Fifth Amendment require that an individual understand what conduct might subject him or her to criminal civil penalties. Here, the stakes get no higher, indefinite military detention. The Constitution requires specificity, and that specificity is absent from Section 1021. Understanding the scope of Section 1021 requires defining key terms. At the March hearing, the government was unable to provide definitions for those key terms. The court has stated its opinion. No detention based upon Section 1021 can occur. The clerk of this court is directed to terminate this action. So ordered Catherine Forrest, United States District Judge, New York, New York. And it's like you said exactly, this pretty much replaces constitutional law with the law of war. So the same laws that our soldiers were applying to when they were busting in doors in Baghdad or Fallujah were the same ones that would apply here in the United States if you're suspected, not convicted, suspected of being someone that, and I quote again, any person who has committed a belligerent act.
So Christopher, give me 1 second, Colin. Christopher,
sure.
As a newcomer to politics, to the political arena, I'm first of all, I just want to thank you for tuning into our show today. This is you definitely are getting the crash course on politics today. In terms of being a fresh face, a new set of eyes to this, do you think that that's justice right there, to where they can just indefinitely detain somebody, and it's already been ruled by a federal judge that was unconstitutional, but they pushed it through anyway?
Well, I mean, here's what's weird. I did the invasion of Iraq, so I was doing the Marine Corps myself, and for years after, you keep hearing them saying they're going to label us as a terrorist because we did do war issue with Iraq and yada yada. And, that kind of scares me sometimes. And even a book that's coming out that says I'm the new patriot, but because we're against Obama, we're against this or that, they could technically label us as a terrorist ourselves because we're veterans of war. But I don't agree with that.
Yes, sir. So you don't agree with being labeled as a terrorist, as a veteran of war, and obviously the government is who is labeling people suspected terrorists. So what kind of oversight is on that? We don't even know. We don't even get to know. We're not allowed to know. This is all part of the national security secrecy. They have secret courts with secret laws and secret interpretations of those laws. Do you think that that's fair as a newcomer to politics? Do you think this is what you thought of America, the home of the free?
Well, to be honest with you, a lot of people ask me why they even get involved, and a lot of people they got a bad image of politics. But I keep saying, if you don't stand up and fight to do something, nothing's going to change. So for the veterans and for the country, which I do have in my heart to go forward, I kind of took on the opportunity to be that voice of the people, if that makes sense.
Yes, sir. Yeah, it makes a lot of sense.
So the question is, there's a lot of things that we change, that's not right with what's going on in the country. We all know that.
Yes, sir. Did you have any final thoughts for Colin?
Was he the one invited me or yourself?
I probably invited you to the show. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Alrighty. Well, thanks for calling in. I appreciate it, Christopher.
Oh, no.
Anyway, Colin, so in terms of what you guys have going on, is there something specifically that people can do right now to help out the cause?
Well, hey, we got, I don't know how many Oregon listeners you have, but on Tuesday, this coming Tuesday, December 16th, in Eugene, the county commissioners are very possibly going to make a decision on the ordinance that we have put in front of them for the last 8 months. Their legal counsel will be making a decision or kind of their analysis and presenting that analysis of our ordinance that pretty much criminalizes the unconstitutional provisions of the 2012 NDA. And if we can get as many Oregonians down to Harris Hall in Eugene, Oregon, and I have the address, it'd be great. I don't know how many Oregon listeners you have, but it is 125 East 8th Avenue, Eugene, or if you type in Harris Hall, Eugene, they'll give you directions to that. That's 9 a.m. County Commissioners meeting. But other than that, I think that people get so disenfranchised and so angry at joining politics because they feel like they have no invested. They can make no difference. And I think that if you work at a national level and you try to influence national level right away, you'll just beat yourself down yourself. And I think working at a county level and enacting ordinances, or working at a state level and trying to enact a state law, that is where to do it. That is where we have the power. Getting local politicians that agree with the Constitution and that will uphold their oath of office to defend the Constitution of their state and of the U.S. Constitution, that is where you find the best gratification and the most success level. If you're trying to influence Washington, D.C., you're going to beat yourself down, you're going to get defeated, and you're going to quickly decide that, politics is not the thing for you. One quote that, the last speaker just say, hey, I got to get involved because, what else am I going to do? I have a quote for that. And the only thing necessary for the triumph of evil is for good people to do nothing. And that is Edmund Burke. And I think that's really true. At least if we go out, at least you did something. At least you tried. It doesn't matter if you fail, but if we just do nothing, evil will triumph. And that is exactly what's going to happen. And I feel so saddened for those people who just completely given up, because you can't give up on your local jurisdictions. You gotta elect a sheriff that understands the Constitution. You gotta elect your state representatives who understand the Constitution. And so I just get involved. Do not give up hope. Work locally. Think globally. All that good stuff.
Yes, sir. Yeah. So, and I agree with the point that you're making as far as, it is easier to influence a local government. The local governments have a lot of control, and being able to participate in your local government, you can affect a substantial amount of change, especially with a small group. A small group can suddenly become a big minority in a small community. So it is important to get active in your own community, your own local politics. And this is exactly why our founders were against the centralization of power, because it's much harder to affect change in somebody, thousands of miles away in Washington, and having to answer to, a national constituency as opposed to a local one, which is much smaller and much easier to make influence within. I completely agree with you. However, we do have to cut to the next segment of the show today. We're running out of time. Colin, first, I just want to say thanks so much for joining us today. And one more time, can you give our listeners your guys' website information?
Yeah, our national group is pandaunite.org. And if you are interested in local ordinances, or if you're part of Oregon, you can just Google Panda Oregon Facebook or Panda Oregon YouTube, and we have a lot of links and videos there. So it's been a pleasure to be here. Thank you for inviting me.
Yes, sir. Yeah, anytime you guys have anything going on, you need to blast out there, let me know. I'll have one of you guys on. I'm happy to help you guys get the word out about what you're doing. You have my 100% full support. So anything you need, let me know.
Sounds good. Thanks, Mack.
All right. Well, take it easy, Colin. All right, guys, so at this point, we're going to cut to a commercial break, and when we come back, we're going to go ahead and discuss some issues, with the CIA torture report. I really want to crack into that egg. I think it's important that we discuss this. And I know some of you guys are going to disagree with me, and that's fine. I would love to hear from you, hear your side. Let me know. The number to the show is 619-924-0986. Again, that's 619-924-0986. And before we cut to this commercial, I just want to ask you guys, if you are in Oregon and you are looking to get involved in the Oath Keeper organization at all, please feel free to check out OROathkeepers.org. Again, that's oroathkeepers.org. And check out their organization, see what they're up to. It's a very amazing organization when it comes to protecting constitutional rights. If you guys are looking for a group of people to get active with, to get out there, get on the move, these are the people that do it. Again, that's oroathkeepers.org. Anyway, we'll be right back after this commercial break. Don't go anywhere.
I do solemnly swear that I will support and defend the Constitution of the United States of America against all enemies, foreign and domestic, and that I will bear true faith and allegiance to the same, and that I take this obligation freely without any mental reservation or purpose of evasion, pledging my life, my fortune, and my sacred honor. So help me God. Join us at oathkeepers.org.
Support On The Move. Help us make this podcast bigger and better. You can do this by going to our store and purchasing one of our hundreds of products. All designs are original and made for patriots like you. Just go to cafepress.com/onthemoveshow. We appreciate your support. Hi, I'm Latasha Worley, and I work with candidates to creatively and effectively communicate their message to voters. I offer professional graphic design services from yard signs to flyers, from logos to vehicle magnets. Email me today at latashaworley@gmail.com. That's LATOSHA Worley@gmail.com for a quote on items for your campaign.
Broadcasting from deep within occupied territory on the far left coast. You're listening to On the Move with Mack Worley III. Stand up, speak out, and get on the move. And now your host, Mack Worley III.
Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, patriots and preppers, I'm Mack Worley III, and this is On the Move, the show that attempts to inspire you to stand up for your rights. Anyway, we're back. It's the second hour. We're well into the second hour now. We are going to cover the Mack attack segment here in a moment. I want to talk about the CIA torture report. And first and foremost, so I want to talk about this I Will Not Comply rally that was had in Olympia, Washington. I really do. I feel privileged to have gone there. Man, I was stuttering. I'm so excited. It was such a special moment for me to go. We were all concerned. I mean, nobody knew what was going to happen. Thousands of people signed up to go. It was like 6,500 people said they were going to go. It turned out to be a cold and foggy day, so a lot of people didn't show up that said they were going to. But still, there was at least 1,000 people, at least 1,000, and people were coming and going. So who knows in total how many people were there? Some people may have came when other people left. The crowd seemed pretty consistently the same size. So. Regardless, it was an amazing moment. I don't believe that many armed people in one location have been assembled in Washington's history since a war. I honestly, that many people. And I was walking around trying to find all the security that I thought was going to be there from the police. I mean, I saw police there every now and then. All in all, I got to give major kudos to the police that were there. Didn't harass anybody, didn't bother anybody. I never saw any issues whatsoever. It wasn't even that big of a police presence. I mean, you're talking about 1,000 people with guns. And I maybe saw, the entire time I was there, maybe 10 police officers. And you guys know me. I'm looking to see what kind of security that there is around there. I come from a security background, so the very first thing I'm doing is I'm doing a walk around. I'm checking to see if there's any kind of inner and outer cordon. I went a 3-block radius of the Capitol. There were no National Guard, which, by the way, I heard there was a rumor they were there, and I was looking for them. Didn't find them. If they were there, they were way out there. I don't know, but anyway, I was also looking around for, snipers on rooftops and stuff. I didn't know. I didn't see any of that, and I got to give major kudos to the Washington State Police or whoever was in charge of securing that event. I think the response was excellent. They had an excellent response. They just blocked off areas and let us do our thing. They didn't get involved. They didn't harass us. It was a great event. Great event. Gavin Syme, he's the one that put it on. Did an amazing job. Lots of amazing speakers. I was surprised at some of these speakers how well their speeches were written. Some of the points that they made. Some people I didn't know, and they surprised me. I was like, oh wow, I'm going to start paying attention to this person. So, pretty cool. And obviously, I met a lot of awesome people. We went out afterwards, all of us armed to the teeth. Went out for pizza afterwards, and hung out with a lot of cool people. So. It was great to meet people who I've talked to on the internet, put a face to a name and things like that. Just such a great experience, and watching everybody stand up, it was emotional. There were several speakers that got choked up and started to cry. It's a very emotional situation to see everyone standing together in solidarity, and I was happy to be there. It was a momentous occasion. With that said, I want to quickly just play a short clip here of Sheriff Richard Mack. You guys know him. He was on the show last week, and it stunned me. I was literally stunned when I actually went to this event because Sheriff Richard Mack was there. So if you guys don't know, I already, before I had Sheriff Mack on the show, I was already a huge fan. All right, I'm already an avid Sheriff Richard Mack fan. I love what he's done. I didn't know a whole lot about him personally. After having him on the show, this guy has become like a legend to me. Everything he was saying last week was like it was like he was pulling it right out of my mind of things like that I absolutely support and believe. He was talking heavily on state sovereignty, which I'm loving. This there's like a resurgence now of state sovereignty. People are really getting into this and really starting to understand that states are the power. The people in the states, the federal government is not our masters. The people in the states, respectively, those are the people who should be controlling and regulating and passing laws and things like that. The federal government has no business having a hand in every aspect. And that's because everybody knows that this all came down to an experiment. This is supposed to be the American experiment. And when you make an experiment, you don't just experiment in one little area. All right? If you have a test subject, if you're running an experiment, you aren't going to just bring in one laboratory rat and see how that rat does. You have a group. You have a control group. You have several experiments going on at the same time. And some of them will fail. You will have failures. That's what happens in experiments. That happens all the time. But some experiments will succeed. And what I'm talking about is the states. So when we have an experiment going on and it's being conducted by the federal government, we are limited to only one test subject. All we have. If the federal government makes a mistake, we live or die on that mistake. That's it. If a state makes a mistake, that state can fail. All right? But other states can learn from that state's mistake and not make that mistake. As well, other states can look to the states that are succeeding, and they can emulate those states, copy what they did to succeed, and succeed themselves. That's the point. That's why state sovereignty is so important, not to mention the fact, we can talk about power and distrust for government, which, believe me, I've talked about it to infinitum. I talk about it every day. I don't trust the government at all. I don't trust the government as far as I can throw them. As far as I'm concerned, they need to be bogged down with so much red tape they can't move. That's the way I feel. Government shutdown, I'm all for it. That's how I feel. The government is a threat. And I'm not even referring to individuals. The government is a threat to the United States. The government will be our downfall. The government. If we fall as a nation, if something happens to us, it will be because of the government. It's not going to be because of terrorists. It's not going to be. That's just not. We may get invaded from Russia or China or something down the line. We may be beaten militarily. That could happen. It's unlikely. I don't think it would. But what I do think is that our downfall will be because of the government. So that's why I believe in state sovereignty. That's why I believe in this experiment. Because if the government grows and grows and grows and grows and the experiment fails, boom, that's it. We're done. We're food for our enemies. Essentially, we got barbarians at the gates. We've got so many geopolitical enemies out there. So many people that want to see us fail. So many people that are just waiting for their opportunity to get their lick in. You know, they just want to kick us while we're down. There are tons of enemies at the gates. And if we allow the government, the central federal Leviathan, to run the experiment and only conduct it one subject running at a time instead of all 50 states running as test subjects, test states, then we're going to fail. At some point or another, the government will make a mistake, and we are running down the track of a very ruinous path right now. We have $18 trillion in debt. $18 trillion. We're talking over $100,000 of debt for each individual American citizen. $100,000. Over $100,000. We are going to spend ourselves into oblivion. The government is running us into slavery right now. This experiment is failing. And unless we take the reins back, we pull back on those reins, we're in a lot of trouble. We really are. Anyway, the whole reason why I got into this, I know I went down a rabbit hole here, but Sheriff Richard Mack was at I-594, at the I-594 rally, and the I Will Not Comply rally in Olympia, Washington. He was up there, and like I said, this was such a surprise to me because I had no idea he was going to be there. I was literally so very excited. So, first of all, I got to meet him. I got to shake his hand. That was amazing to me. I know you guys may not care, but I was very excited about it. Anyway, I got a clip here from his speech, and I'm going to go ahead and play it. It's a couple minutes long, but I think it's important, so I'm going to go ahead and let you guys listen to it.
All right, so we're exercising the First Amendment here in protection of the Second Amendment, and that's exactly how it goes because they go hand in hand. It's not a cafeteria. You don't get to pick and choose which one we're going to keep. We're keeping them all. We're not here just for the Second Amendment. We're here for all of our rights. No exceptions, all the time, freedom, 10th Amendment, all the way down to the First Amendment, and first back up to the 10th. We're not making any exceptions for any of them. Our politicians have a hard time with the English language. So I'm really glad that Gavin read that part because so many of the politicians, you got to get the peanut butter out of their ears. Because when you say shall not be infringed, they don't hear that not part. They think it says shall be infringed. And that's why they continue to do this. Have they ever looked at world history? Have they ever looked at really the history of gun control throughout the world? Have they ever looked at that and seen what it does? Who's the greatest gun control fanatic in world history? Hitler. Why do our politicians in Washington emulate Adolf Hitler? And they think that there's no problem. Yeah. So I did a study. I did a book about that. I've written lots of books. And I wrote a book about that very issue. Because your politicians want you to believe that gun control is magic. And so I wrote a book called The Magic of Gun Control. And you see, why would it be magic? The only way that gun control could ever be magic is if it did something good. If it provided any benefit to any of you, even to your children. Now, I have 5 children, and we have 12 grandchildren. 12. You're supposed to say, I don't look that old. Thank you very much. But, my dear friends, the reason I came all the way from Arizona is because I love all of you, and I love my grandkids, and I love my country. So the reason I came here was God, family, and country. And I'm going to tell you right now, I didn't have time to come here. I didn't. I went to Washington, D.C. on Monday. I got home yesterday afternoon. I changed clothes and shaved and went to Tucson to a meeting. That was 2 hours away from where I live. I drove back, got home at 10:30, packed for this trip, left this morning at 5 o'clock, and got here this afternoon. And then they called me from the church and reminded me that I have to teach Sunday school tomorrow. And Monday I'll be in Minnesota. And so we're keeping busy because you know why? The threat to our freedoms is so real. And this is the most crucial time in American history since the Civil War. And we are the generation to decide if we're going to remain a free constitutional republic or if we're going to succumb to political correctness and lose our way and lose our freedoms and lose our Constitution and lose our liberty and enslave ourselves and our children with this notion that somehow gun control will be magic if we try it in America. It will do something good for you, even though in world history it never has. If you want magic, the book says, if you want magic, go to Vegas or Disneyland. And you can see the illusions there because that's what gun control is, a big, fat, lie illusion.
And that was Sheriff Richard Mack. I'm telling you, everything he says resonates with me. I was so excited. I don't know if you guys have seen the movie Elf, but if you have, you know the part where Will Ferrell is in the store and they say that Santa's going to be there, and he's like, Santa! That's how I felt. I was out there. I was like, Richard Mack? Oh my gosh, Richard Mack's going to be here. This is crazy. That's exactly how I felt. I was stupid excited. I could not believe that Richard Mack was there. I got to meet him, got to shake his hand. It was awesome. Anyway, let's move on here. I actually want to cut to the hard pushing issues here, and we're gonna go ahead and just enter into the Mack attack. And in today's Mack attack, we're gonna talk about the CIA torture report. So here we go.
It's time for the Mack attack.
All right, this is a segment where I report about outrageous events in the news. So anything that you guys have on your mind as well, you're welcome to call in. The number to the show is 619-924-0986. Again, that's 619-924-0986. You guys are the reason why we do this broadcast. So please, if you have anything on your mind, call in. You disagree with me, call in. You agree with me, call in. I don't care. It's fine. Or you can just email us, talk@onthemoveshow.com. I'm happy to read your emails live on the air. So let's talk about the CIA report, this torture report. It's been in the news like crazy. There's so many different sides to it. Everybody's been talking about this thing. It seems like you can't turn on CNN or Fox News or something like that without this being on. It's just on. And for me, this is one of those things that, it's taken me some time to really develop on this issue, In the past, I used to be very, very total war, so to speak. If they're political enemy, no mercy, or not even political, but geopolitical. They're a threat to us, no mercy, take them out. And I put a lot of faith in my government to determine who the threats were. That is something I didn't want to think about. I didn't like to think about that. Like, can you trust your government to determine who is a threat? These kind of things are stuff that people don't want to think about. You don't want to think that you can't trust your government at all, right? I mean, that's a negative thought just to have, that you can't trust them at all. And over a period of time, I've developed this major distrust for not just my government, but the institution of government. I'm not an anarchist by any means. I understand it's a necessary evil. It's one of those things that we have to have. But I think that we need to have it totally restrained. Ask yourself, do you think there's enough laws right now? Do you think that the society that we live in needs more laws? I don't. I don't think that we need any more laws. I think we need to do a whole lot of work to get rid of a lot of these laws, because we have too many laws. We've got laws about everything now. You can get in trouble for transporting a lobster. A lobster. Who's that harming? There's some kind of lobster plague going around that you can put people at risk from carrying a lobster, and now you can get sick and hurt other people. No, that's not going. That's not the reason. It's a regulatory thing. They want to limit and control. They want to have access and everything, and have their fingers in every pie that's made, and they want control of everything. Everything. That's what it's about. It's about control. So, in terms of this national security conversation, because that's today's show, the whole subject is national security. You know, I used to really believe that I could trust my government to differentiate between who was friend and who was foe, and, you know, whatever. If they're enemy, if my government determines that you're my enemy, I want them gone. I don't care what the government does. Let them do whatever. Let them torture them. Let them nuke them. That's how I used to think. Okay, that was my thought process. And I'm ashamed about it, honestly. I'm ashamed of that. Now I have developed more of a philosophy that I try to go by. And after giving a lot of thought about it, you know, I really think that this is the way that we should look at things. Obviously, everybody thinks that they're right. I found this position from being wrong. And I find myself wrong all the time. So if I'm wrong on this, you know, whatever, I'll figure it out eventually. But right now, this is what I go off of. Every action that we do within the government, you know, it has to be able to, in even every situation, every single situation we're looking at, is we need to identify two basic principles. One, and the most important one to me, is to protect the rights of the individuals. So determine where individual rights fall into play. You know, who's the victim? Is there a victim? If there is no victim, then there's no problem, essentially, as far as I'm concerned. So if there's a law that says somebody made or somebody violated the law and committed a crime, if that crime didn't produce a victim, if there was not some kind of articulatable hurt that was caused by somebody doing that, then I don't believe that should be against the law. And the second principle is to restrict the government as much as possible. I mean, completely restrict them as much as possible. Keep them through checks and balances. And even, I don't even believe that the Constitution was effective enough because of the Commerce Clause and the Article 1, Section 8 of the Constitution, which says that the federal government is responsible for providing the common defense and general welfare. These terms have been so taken out of context. If you actually read the Federalist Papers, the people who wrote these things and debated these conversations, they talk about what their intentions were. And yet the Supreme Court, they just decide to ignore everything historically that was there. All of the conversations that were there, they ignore it. And a lot of this had to do with, a certain case, Wicker v. something or other. I can't remember what it is right now. I'm going to cover that in an upcoming episode and really talk about what damage that did. But additionally, a lot of Supreme Court cases, they flipped because of actions taken during the New Deal. Very concerning because, they say that the switch that saved the nine or something along those lines. FDR was going to pack the courts. He was going to increase the amount of justices on the Supreme Court to, I think, like 20-something or other, something like that, instead of 9, because the 9 that were sitting on the court right now were not voting in his favor. So he was like, well, you know what? If you're not going to vote in my favor, I'm just going to totally change the rules here and pack the court full of people, more people than you guys would have, and get a majority of people who will do what I want them to do. First of all, that kind of tactic, are you kidding me? That's ridiculous. Anyway, we're going to have to speed through a lot of this because I just glanced at the clock. We got like 15 minutes left in the show. But this basic principle, these two basic principles in this philosophy of protecting individual rights and restricting the government as much as possible, I think is really the way to look at every situation. That's how you do it. You look at these and try to really find out, are you protecting the individual and are you restricting the government? That's how you do it, okay? So right now, we don't even get to know, as far as the CIA torture report and the NDAA, the Patriot Act, indefinite detainment, assassinations, things along those lines, how we have divided the constitutional law that we give to the citizens, unless they fall underneath the NDAA, and then everybody, including foreigners and enemies and things like that, they fall under the rules of war. That's unconscionable to do that. To govern and judge people, have a system created that treats people differently, that's just wrong morally, I believe. But also, we can't, when it falls underneath this rules of war thing, we don't know what's going on anymore. It's not public record. It's not public information. How can we consent to the government? How can we consent to what our government is doing unless we know what they're doing? The justification is national security, national security. Oh, we can't tell you what's going on, national security. This is changing the rules of the game. Remember earlier when I was saying the Constitution is basically establishment of a rules for the game. To change the Constitution is to change the rules of the game. Well, essentially, they have changed the rules of the game. People who are considered enemies get these new rules that they play under. And these rules are extremely living. These rules are a living, breathing, changing rules to fit whatever need that they want. They can change it however they want, however they need, whatever politically suits them. And now they've created a process to where they can pull people out of the old system, the constitutional system, where you got rights. Okay, well, you've got these rights underneath this system. We have a rule of law and things like that. But you know what? We've suspected you of terrorism, and now you are being pulled out of the constitutional system into this new system that we've created where you don't have any rights, privileges, nothing like that. And again, if you are going to honestly believe in the Constitution and human rights, all right, most people don't believe in the Constitution because it was written by our founders. Most people don't believe in the Constitution because it's a piece of paper and, you know, it's important and it was ratified and it went through all this legal mumbo-jumbo to make it a legal document. People believe in it because of the ideas. That's all. If it wasn't for the ideas, if the Constitution contained nothing of value, it was only, you know, one word that says like hello, and it went through all the same legal processes, all the same thing, and everything like that. It went through all of that. It was ratified, all this stuff. It just said hello. People wouldn't care about the Constitution. People care about it because it has ideas in it. That's it. That's the only reason. It has new ideas. At the time, it was completely revolutionary. These ideas, popular sovereignty, where people are the ones who consent to the governed or to being governed by the government. That's the only place that the government gets their political authority or power from, is from the people, from the consent of the people. That is popular sovereignty. At the time, it was a very inspirational idea, and now we all typically agree with it, especially Americans. We believe that these rights are self-evident, that they were endowed upon us by our Creator, or they are natural human rights. And if that's the case, they extend to everyone, not just American citizens, all of us, every single human on the planet, which means that when we prosecute somebody for a war crime, it should be underneath our laws and with our Constitution. So when they move everything to these secret courts and we don't know what's going on, we can't consent to it, which makes that action illegitimate. A government cannot govern without the consent of the people, and if it does, it's an illegitimate government or an illegitimate act. Not to mention, just to point out a simple fact, we're talking about the rules of war. Torture is against the Geneva Convention. I know because I was trained on it. Torture is against the Uniform Code of Military Justice when dealing with prisoners of war. So if we're dealing with prisoners of war and we're torturing them, we're in violation of the Geneva Convention, which we are a participant, a signer of. We are beholden to. The Uniform Code of Military Justice, which every single branch of the Department of Defense is beholden to the Uniform Code of Military Justice. Every single one of them. To torture, you're in violation of it. It's also in violation of international law. But hey, who cares, right? International law. Whatever. There is such thing as an international norm, and that is established according to the Geneva Convention. I mean, that is what international law is. These are agreements that we made. Hey, we're not going to do this. You guys won't do that. You know, even if we face a guerrilla force that uses this kind of tactics, we're not going to use them ourselves. Why? Because we have a moral high ground to stand on. That's why. So what we've moved into here is this war on terror. A war on terror. Okay, we could have a war on happiness, a war on sadness, a war on. I mean, this is a state, and I don't mean a nation state, like a state of being. I'm in the state of happiness right now. I'm in a happy state. You know, terror. We're at war with the state of being. It's never ending. When will we win? When will we win the war on terror? Never. There's not an end to the war on terror. There's no such thing as an end to the war on terror. What could happen? If we declare it, okay, yeah, the war on terror is over. Well, these people still want to kill us. Okay. Well, I guess it's back on then. There's never an ending of this war. It's a 100-year, 1,000-year war. All right? We've created a situation where crimes of terror are classified differently than regular crimes. There's still crimes. To kill somebody is still a crime. It doesn't matter if they were trying to do it for a political reason or not. It's still a crime to kill. Prosecute them under the law. Let justice prevail, and let's move forward. We either trust our legal system or we don't. All right? We either have evidence against this person or we don't. If we don't have evidence, then we need to let them go. I know it's scary. I know letting somebody who's a suspected terrorist go is scary, but I believe the government can and does make mistakes. And also, if we're shoring up our borders and really trying to secure ourselves and limit people coming in with work visas and vacation visas and things like that, and really being selective in our immigration process, if we secure our borders, we secure our destiny. If we do those things, letting people go who we don't have enough evidence to prosecute, to convict, let them go. It's not as big of an issue because they're gone. Kick them out of the country, deport them. I think that's a simple issue. But right now, we have now the NDAA. You're talking about suspected terrorists. Suspected. If you don't have enough proof to convict, what it is, it's an accusation. Somebody accused you or someone of being a terrorist. Who decides? Who decides who's a suspected terrorist? The government. Is there any oversight on that? How do we determine? How do we know how they found out that they were a terrorist? We don't know. We're not allowed to know. We don't get to know because it's a national security issue. We're not allowed to tell you, blah, blah, blah. How do we know that it's not going to be turned on us at some point? If we don't get to know any of this stuff, these secret laws, secret judges, secret courts, it's all going to be turned on us if we don't do something about this. You know, and think about it. Ask yourself this question. Could torture be used to get a confession out of somebody? You know, and that's all it would take is somebody to accuse somebody else of being a terrorist, and boom, you're a suspected terrorist. Or not even, I mean, you don't even need any proof to accuse somebody. I can make an accusation. I could say right now, I think that Barack Obama can fly. Is that proof of anything? No. That doesn't mean that he's going to sprout wings. That's just me accusing him of flying. That's all. That is not proof. We believe in rule of law as a society. We believe in these things. We believe in these rights. We hold them very high. We believe that they're self-evident, meaning we don't have to explain their existence. You should know. You should know these exist. So to detain somebody for the mere accusation of being a criminal, never allow them to see a judge or a courtroom or an attorney. Do we really want that? You know, the Eighth Amendment, it protects us against cruel and unusual punishment. But to say cruel and unusual punishment would be to say that somebody was actually being convicted. These people haven't even been convicted, yet they're being tortured. They're being tortured for information. It could lead to a confession. Can you see how this can go? You know, if somebody was suspected of being a terrorist and they wanted to get some information out of him, they torture him until he admits that he did it. Now, boom, they got a signed confession. People will say whatever they have to get the torture to stop. But the Eighth Amendment protects us against cruel and unusual punishment. These people haven't been convicted, but yet their constitutional rights have been suspended. They don't get any rights, any privileges. No judge, no jury, no trial, just torture. Waterboarding. That's all they get. That's their life until they break, and everybody has their breaking point. Do we really trust our government with that much power? Do you trust your government to never use this power in a manner that you would even disagree with? Let's not even talk about all the other stuff, but just say in a manner that you would disagree with. Do you trust giving this unlimited power to people that may use it in a way you could disagree with? And you'll never know because you're not allowed to know. And additionally, what if it got turned on to us or to you specifically? Do you really think that that's a wise decision? You know, I want to restrict the government from gaining power, any power. I don't care what it is, whether it's the power to regulate dog vaccinations or the power to keep secrets from the American people. I want to stifle them. They've done enough. They've created enough laws. We have a very busybody Congress. We got busybodies in our bureaucracy right now, just trying to keep active, keep busy. They just got to do something, pass a law, make it look like we're doing something. Let's get more control. But again, let's move to my topic earlier. Do you believe that America has more of a chance of being taken down from cave-dwelling terrorists or from an internal threat? I believe that we will only defeat ourselves in the end. If we fall, it will be because our government got too big and tried to do too much. That is the biggest threat to our society, not terrorists. You have a bigger chance of being killed by a bee in America than by being killed by a terrorist. Do you see us spending billions of dollars to protect ourselves against bees? No, because there's no power to be gained in protecting us from bees. They want us afraid. They want us at each other's throats, divided and scared. That is the only way that they expand their powers, under the guise of protecting us or saying, oh, it's for your own good. Anyway, I have a lot more to say on this, but we are out of time. I don't understand where the time goes. I could seriously do this show for like 5 hours a day. It's pretty ridiculous. Anyway, I really appreciate you guys tuning in. I see we have a caller, and I wasn't able to get to you in time. I'm real sorry about that. Please feel free to give us a call in next week. Again, guys, don't forget to check us out at our website, OnTheMoveShow.com, here at blogtalkradio.com/OnTheMoveShow. You can like us on Facebook.com/OnTheMoveShow. You can check us out on YouTube.com/OnTheMoveShow, and follow us on Twitter, Twitter.com/OnTheMoveShow. And as always, know your rights, assert your rights, get on the move.